Hello friends, it is severe weather week. So that means it's a week we take to really think about what kind of weather is coming our way for this spring and summer. Some of that weather can be a little bit dangerous, so it's good to know what the precautions are. In honor of this week, we are going to read a really kind of interesting book called Tornadoes. And this book is written by Lorraine Jean Hopping and it's illustrated by Jody Wheeler. So chapter 1, In the Path of a Tornado. The air was hot, sticky, and still, a good sign. Dark thunderclouds crackled over the road ahead, even better. Scientist Tim Marshall and his friend Roy Britt knew they were close, but they weren't sure how close. Then it happened. A spinning funnel of wind dropped from the sky. Less than a mile away, it smacked the ground hard. A giant funnel was white and almost noiseless. It kicked up clouds of dust, branches, and bits of unknown objects. That's it, Tim thought. It was what he had hoped for, a tornado. Tim and Roy are tornado chasers. They film and study tornadoes. Tim and Roy must drive very close to the deadly storms. On that spring day, they almost came too close. Tim parked the van southeast of the tornado. That's usually the safest spot for filming. The reason is that tornadoes normally travel from southwest to northeast. We're going to stop here for a second. We're going to talk about how tornadoes travel. Okay, we are back. So we're talking about how tornadoes travel. So in the book, it really tells you that tornadoes like to travel southwest to northeast. So if we were looking at a map of the United States, we see that Canada is above the United States, and that's where a lot of cold air is produced. Down in the south of the United States is the Gulf of Mexico, and that's where a lot of warm, moist air is produced. So what happens then is that this cold, dry air from Canada collides with this warm, moist air from the Gulf of Mexico. And in the center, that's where it starts that swirling different masses. So usually when a tornado is formed, they're talking about it will start, so let's give this tornado, we'll put it in Oklahoma. So it'll start more towards the southwest. So here's the south and here's the west. And then it will move towards the northeast. So we have the north and the east here. So when they track tornadoes, they always track where it starts and where it moves. And this is how it tends to move. Now, can it move differently or be different? Absolutely. But for the most part, this is how a tornado moves. Okay, we're back to our book. Now, we just got done reading that tornadoes normally travel from southwest to northeast. And now we're going to keep going. So it says, then the two tornado chasers set up their tools, video cameras, tripods, and a TV for watching weather reports. Tim and Roy watched the tornado twist across the Texas plain. They felt safe. The tornado was moving away from them, and they filmed the action. Then the tornado changed direction and made a big choppy circle. It was heading toward Tim and Roy. The tornado was now chasing them instead of the other way around. Tim and Roy quickly tossed everything into the van and they jumped in and sped away. Tornadoes usually travel about 30 to 50 miles an hour. That is under the highway speed limit, but some tornadoes go 70 miles an hour. That's really, really fast. And it's way too fast to outrun even in a van. If the tornado did catch Tim and Roy, the winds could pick up the van and throw it like a deadly missile. Here's a picture with that tornado chasing Tim and Roy. That's pretty scary. To avoid the tornado, Tim and Roy had to drive into a hailstorm. Chunks of ice as big as softballs cracked the windshield. Have you ever seen hail? Sometimes it's pretty little, but sometimes it can get really, really big. The van rocked and rolled in 60-mile-per-hour winds, but the deadly tornado missed them. It crossed the road just behind them. It ripped some trees right out of the ground. Then the funnel lifted up and out of sight in a wall of rain. So sometimes a tornado can be wrapped in rain and you can't really see it. That's why it can be extra dangerous sometimes. So you can see Tim and Roy, and this hail is falling, and one hit their windshield enough to crack it. Chapter 2, the spinning funnels. Tornadoes are the most powerful storms on Earth for their size. These mighty storms are tall, skinny funnels of spinning air. The funnels stretch from the ground to mountain-high clouds, about 15,000 to 20,000 feet. Their winds are among the fastest on Earth. They can blow up to 300 miles an hour, which is almost as fast as a DC-10 jet. The world's fastest winds can cause some of the world's worst damage. In 1890, a tornado in Massachusetts blew away roofs and walls of houses, but the furniture inside was just fine. So you can see that the walls are gone and the roof is gone, but the furniture is still right where it was. In 1928, a tornado in Kansas plucked the feathers right off some chickens. Now that would be silly. Some bare chickens. In 1931, a tornado in Missouri lifted an 83-ton train and tossed it 80 feet off the track. So imagine how heavy a train is and how much wind is needed to move something as big as that. In 1948, a tornado in Iowa flipped a house upside down, but the house stayed together. Wow, that's pretty silly. Each spring, hundreds of tornado chasers go to Tornado Alley. Most tornadoes take place in the months of April, May, and June. They're mostly in Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas, but they can form in any month and in any state. Chapter 3. The chase begins. Tornado chasers don't wait for a tornado to hit and then go try and find it. The tornado would be long gone. Most only last minutes or even seconds. Also, tornadoes may be tall, but they're usually skinny. Some can be very skinny. A tornado might wreck one house and never even touch the house next door. They're so fast and skinny that Tim Marshall catches a tornado only 1 out of every 10 chases. It takes a lot of planning to find a tornado. Most tornadoes form in the afternoon, but Tim goes to work early in the morning. He needs time to study the weather. He has to map out a chase route, and he has to get there. He may drive hundreds of miles from his Texas home during a single chase. First, Tim calls the National Severe Storms Forecast Center. He asks for information about the weather. Tornadoes form inside huge thunderstorms. These storms can span several states. Tim wants to know if any storms are in the area, so he checks with the radar experts at the storm center. Radar tracks thunderstorms as they move. The storms show up on a radar screen as blobs of color. So there's your radar screen and blobs of color. The chasers hope one of those blobs has a hook pattern like an S or a 6. That stands for a funnel cloud, and funnel clouds can become tornadoes. The most likely spot for a tornado is along a storm front. That's where a large mass of cold air meets a large mass of warm air. On the radar screen at the storm center, the funnel cloud looks hook-shaped. The storm center sends out a tornado watch. This is a message that tells everyone in the area to take cover in case a tornado touches down. So we're going to take a pause here so I can show you a picture. This happened several years ago, very close to my house. It's a good picture of a funnel cloud. The skinny, twisted funnel cloud extended down but never touched the ground. That's a good thing.